Hi, everybody. It's me, the Fetch, host of Inside the Eye Live. Before the Sunday mainstream media political pundit talk shows, there is Inside the Eye Live, where we break down some of the weekly mainstream media talking points before the talking points even get aired. Add in some entertaining stories, weather, cats, intriguing and informative guests, and you get one of the most listened to Saturday morning streaming media political talk shows going today. And it's all right here on our flagship station, Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. So join me, The Fetch, for Inside the Eye Live every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern. It is truly intelligent media for the politically aware.
Welcome to Sacred Matrix, a divine paradigm of love and universal consciousness, with your host, Janet Kira Lessin and Dr. Sasha Lessin.
Together, we transform the world.
And now, here are your hosts, Janet Kira and Dr. Sasha Lessin.
Hello, welcome to the Sacred Matrix on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. My name is Karen Christie Patrick, and I'm substituting today for Janet and Sasha Lessin, who are in Toronto at a wonderful conference and couldn't make it for the show today. I will tell you a bit about myself. I work with Janet Lessin on Aquarian Radio Thursdays and Fridays. And I'm an independent researcher into the area of anomalies and exopolitics. I administer many groups on Facebook on these topics. I'm a radio co-host, again, like I said, with Janet. It's a lot of fun. And we're going to do my favorite thing tonight. I myself am experiencer, part of the experiencer movement. And tonight we are going to talk to two experiencers and get their story. And I hope it just really touches your heart and opens your mind. So let's get started. Today I am talking to Hildegard von Butes. She's our first experiencer guest, and I have an introduction for her. Hildegard was raised in an extended family environment on a farm in Germany. Her professional background is in languages, international trade, as well as in broadcast journalism. She lived and worked in Europe, South Africa, and Canada, where she raised her four now-grown children. In her early 30s, during many near-death experiences, she became aware of her true non-physical source essence self. She realized consciousness is not limited to the physical vessel, where generally we put most of our focused attention. In seemingly split seconds, she was able to experience her 3D life as well as many other realities simultaneously, without being bound by physicality. Surrounded by the light, she was able to feel, hear, and communicate telepathically with different levels of intelligence. Since then, she has been receiving ongoing telepathic guidance from her Andromedan brother, Louis Marr, a seventh-dimensional consciousness scientist from the Butes Andromeda galaxy. She regained her health against all expert medical prognoses given at the time by following the telepathically received insights from invisible worlds. Hildegard has complete trust in her Andromedan source for her health and that of her family. That has come about by her following Ashtar, Athenar's, and Luminar's ongoing input, most of the time against the recommendation and common practices of the world around her. The medical, social, educational, and religious systems. Hildegard is an intuitive awareness guide and consultant who is committed to support the self-discovery process of all, desiring to reach her full soul potential. She uses her insights into the non-physical aspects of the human being to facilitate the discovery of her client's inner essence, voice, and wisdom, so they may learn to live guided from within. thus aiding them to discover new ways of consciously living, guiding from within, rather than being unconsciously trapped by self-sabotaging, habitual patterning of the conditioned mind. Hildegard is currently in the process of publishing one of her book manuscripts, Never Enough, The Story of a Planet Reborn. The take-home message of this multi-layered story has become the red thread, representing the guiding principles of her spiritual journey. She is also in process of writing about her walk-in experience. She gives workshops at the Happy Soul Books on Bloor Street off of Ossington Street in Toronto, starting in early July, and is working with individual clients online, over the phone, and in person. And Hildegard is one of the hosts at Toronto's only online TV station, thatchannel.com. And Hildegard, welcome to Sacred Matrix. If there's anything you wanted to add to that introduction, we'd be happy to hear from you.
Well, thank you so very much for having me, Karen. I very much appreciate it. And I think you did an awesome job. Thank you so much. There's nothing much to add.
Oh, it's a very fascinating introduction. I'll be looking forward to talking to you. But we're going to go ahead and introduce our next guest, who is Mark. I'm not sure if he wants to use his last name, but he can tell you about himself because I didn't have an introduction. Mark, welcome to the Sacred Matrix.
Thank you very much, Karen. I'm very happy to be here with you on the show tonight. Let me say a little bit about myself. I've been working in the spiritual field for over 30 years. I've established myself in spiritual consciousness through Myriad studies in the healing arts, together with prolonged periods of silence in nature, fasting, and spiritual practices. I have been doing this since 1987, when I was at Machu Picchu in Peru for the Great Convergence. So you can say I've been doing this for almost 30 years now. My own personal growth and journey has provided deep insights into the human conditions, and over the course of decades, this wisdom has proven to many with my existence as a spiritual healer, medium, and life skills coach. I have done many studies through the years with Landmark Education, Reiki Master, NLP, doing divining, core belief technology, heart resonance therapy, and processology. And beginning in 2001, I was starting in the Global Theater as a healer, teacher, channeler, telepath, and public speaker. My abilities to conduct past life regressions and taking people into the future, also offering clear connections to these past, present, future anomalies to understand one's life path plan. I can help move people and clients certainly through life restricting and health issues. I give them many workable tools and solutions to navigate their life as they go through, and have a great understanding of human dynamics and the divine energy. So I came out basically in 2008 from a 7-year introspection, taking time away and coming forward and to begin with what I've come forward with as quantum holographic programming. And this is basically the methodology in which I do my healing. We can talk more about that later. Again, a personal coach, business consultant, channeler, and telepath, seminar leader in communications, personal growth, wellness. And a little bit more to add on that is what I do in the sense that I'm a very gifted interdimensional telepath. I connect with spiritual channels for various ascended beings of light. And we're looking most notably at the spiritual hierarchy, the Arcturians, the Pleiadians, the Sirians, the Andromedans, working with Saint Germain. I also have a very strong connection to Ra from Egypt and Ptah, having the original DNA blueprint from the bloodline, and of course working with the White Brotherhood, the Ancient Ones, Archangel Michael, and many, many more. I come forward and operate under Self-Quest Healing as a coach and guide and healer, and people can, of course, reach me should they like to, and bringing forward an opportunity in Toronto with Hildegard to create a space for people to come forward in awareness through that channel. And we're putting together a program for higher awareness and awakening for people beginning next Sunday. So we're very excited about that indeed, Karen.
That sounds really great. Can I come? I'm down in New Mexico. I'll have to hitch a ride on a UFO to get up there. That's fantastic. Yeah. So I have my first question, and I'm going to be participating in this as well, because I know for sure that a show of this, caliber has people, experiencers, people who are just starting their awareness of all of these kinds of things that we're talking about. And what would be your first piece of advice for someone who's starting to have these experiences and they're confused and their only context is that it's crazy? This month was a lot of that for me. I was talking to people who were telling me this is the first time I've ever told anyone. We had a series of events where a lot of people were belittled and shamed and told they were crazy and mentally ill. So it was a bumpy month. Fortunately, all my experiences were getting through it well. For myself, I just say, you trust your inner guide first, because we've been conditioned to trust experts and to look outside ourselves. And there's these 4 levels of awarenesses: the broad external, so that's the world around us, the 3D world around us; the narrow, external, which is in our immediate environment, family, friends, work, whatnot. But you begin to get some, insight when you go to the inner world, and the internal narrow is your immediate thoughts. But there's this interesting level, the internal, broad internal, where there's a whole universe to be discovered. And our society pushes us towards isolation. We can often feel very alone in our thoughts. And this is the place where we can start to make connections and feel less alone. And once we get into those frequencies, often we're able to change our external reality to reflect our internal reality. So that's kind of a basic thing that I say to people on this path. I would love to get your insight, Hildegard, in that question.
Okay, yeah, I can totally identify with what an experiencer goes through, because when let me just go back even before I walked into the physicality, or how Louis Marr calls it, the vehicle that is now Hildegard. I'm a mother of 4. Way back then I had 3 children. I was in my early 30s. And I lived the typical middle-class stay-at-home mom lifestyle. I had 3 children under 5, and lived in the northwest of Toronto, in the suburbs of Toronto, and lived the typical normal life that a mother with 3 children would do. You do the breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and the diapers, and you go shopping, and you're banking, and stuff like that. And then when I collapsed and fainted and noticed that I saw a bright light, I could think, I could feel, I could hear, and I could see the children upset. The neighbors came running, and at the same time, I realized, oops, I don't have a body. But how it come, I can think, but I don't have hands to cover my eyes. So when all of this first happened and I woke up in an emergency room in a hospital or in the back of an ambulance, and then medical attendants would ask me, what happened? Where were you? I would tell them, well, I'm a consciousness scientist from Andromeda Galaxy. I have, I used to have a crystalline-based body. Now I'm going to be downstepped into a 3D body, carbon-based body, and all of that would come out very quickly. I can't even speak that fast anymore today. And then my husband of 10 years, the poor gentleman, couldn't understand what was going on. The doctor takes the man by the side and says, we got to do something with your wife, She has 3 children. She's staying at home. It's enough to, upset anybody. That's very difficult. Maybe she has postpartum depression. We need to give her this medication and that. I already felt the new essence in me would feel, what are these guys talking about? Where am I? They are all nuts. I had part of the knowledge of how life was in Andromeda, and I didn't realize where I was. So now, go home with me. My husband of 10 years takes me home. I open the door. The kids come running. Mommy, mommy, mommy. And I'm going, oh, who are these people? So it was like there were 2 people inside my head. There was a little bit of the past. I didn't really remember who these people were, but I was told it was going to come back to me really quickly. And I'm saying, hey, dudes, please give me something. I don't know. Who is this guy? What is this? What kind of a place is this? What are these funny clothes on my back? And as I didn't have anybody else to talk to but my husband, everything I said convinced him more that I was nuts. So for your experiences, yes, it's very difficult. And you said the right thing. Be with it. Maybe don't say anything. Pick up the journal. Start writing all your thoughts down. May they ever be so crazy. And just allow the process to evolve. What my guide from this little commuter shuttle, Andromedan shuttle, Louis Marr, told me, he said, you will want for nothing, but you might not get what you want. I am here, you and I are in this together. I need to make sure that you don't destroy the physical body because we don't have time, 30 years, to wait for another body to come along. You chose to be part of this, but they didn't tell me what this was. They didn't give me you have to raise consciousness on the planet. I wasn't given that much. He just said, all you got to do, raise these children to the light, and later on you tell the story about it. And you will only be given as much as your brain can handle. But I was raised Catholic. I had certain worldviews, how my life should be, and there was constantly the left brain seemingly running, or the logical mind was running interference, while the telepathic voice was always the voice of reason. And so I would just suggest people who are in this situation, don't do anything harsh. Don't just run out and leave your life and quit your job and, abandon your children. Just be where you are. Make sure your body is safe. Don't get into big discussions. Allow yourself to maybe write all the different voices in your head if that's what you experience. I don't know. Everybody's experience is different. But I had all these different voices that seemingly were contradicting each other. One side says turn left, the other says no, you have to go right. And so I had this inner battle for a while until I finally came to terms with the world out there is nuts. I am not crazy. This environment doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. And I just will not interact with them for a while. Mark said earlier he was kind of in hibernation. I kind of try to be alone as much as possible. I learned very quickly. I had a lady who gave me the name Ashta Athena, and she said she was there to help me understand how to get dressed, how to do breakfast, how to cook, how to go shopping. I came into the shopping mall. I'm going, what am I doing here? And she says, you take this little buggy, and then I will guide you along, and I will show you what you now can eat, because now what you need to have, because you're a carbon-based body, you now need to feed yourself. And I will show you how and what. And so it was as if one had a Bluetooth in the ear, which, of course, in the early 90s, I didn't have internet. I didn't have Bluetooth. I had no understanding of internet and hard drives and mainframes and networks. I knew nothing about that. But it felt, nowadays the analogy works because we now understand what Bluetooth is. There was this 24-hour commentary running, let's say, inside my head. When I didn't know what to do, or I was petrified. Oh, yeah, that was really fun. The big 14-lane highways or whatever, you have them at your state as well.
Yes.
And the first time I was to drive the car, and I had to put the three little ones, the 5-year-old, the 2-year-old, and the baby in the car, and the dog, a family dog, a golden retriever. And I was to go and bring these kids somewhere, and that necessitated to go on the highway. And I was driving along the highway, and I was told what to do, and it was an automatic Chrysler van of sorts, and wasn't difficult. But as I was driving along the highway, I suddenly realized nobody was in the bodies in the car. They were all driven by placeholders. These people were unconscious. And suddenly I thought, oh, there's one. Oh, there's another one. And then I'm driving along. Oh, there's somebody really conscious in that car. I should follow that. You know what I mean? I went between panic attack and excitement at 100 kilometers per hour. I hope this is helpful.
I loved it. I have a lot of parallels because I started a bit slower transition when I had children. I can completely identify. And yes, you do notice people who are on automatic pilot, so to speak, and there's a fire in the eyes behind people who are switched on. So, wonderful story. Thank you. Mark, what would you say?
Can I make one comment to this? Because that might be very insightful and helpful, too. You know, cars have radios. I switched the radio on, and instead of, the local news coming on, I swear to God, I heard a voice saying, this is an automatic car, and here's what you got to do this, do that, and turn the key that way, and then you do this, and then you turn this, and you do that. This is the steering wheel. Like, I got this full commentary as if you buy a car and you'd never driven a car before, how to run this car. And then it came music on, and the words of the music were actually also given guidance. I don't know how that works, but that happened a lot.
Oh,
Thanks
amazing.
so much for letting me add that.
That's a really wonderful story. Mark, what would you say, and share your story of, becoming an experiencer and your process?
Oh, that's a very interesting story that Hildegard has. Indeed, and she shared it several times, and it's always amazing to listen to what she's gone through. For myself, it was about 10 years ago, I had what I would call my awakening. And I was in my hot tub just relaxing after work one night. And all of a sudden, there was a vivid image to the left of me. And this image was of the Earth, of Mother Earth. And it was the size of one of those globes that you would get like in school or high school that you had in the geography class in the corner. And around the globe's equator was 12 crystal skulls, kind of like the skulls from Indiana Jones movie, right? And on top was a 13th crystal skull, an amethyst one. And I saw this light coming down from through the ceiling, going into the top crystal skull, and it then went out into 12 directions down to the other 12 around the equator, and then a circle around, and then it just impregnated into the Earth. And I saw the Earth expanding and growing with light, and there was cracks and fissures, and the light was gleaming through, and it just shone right through in all directions in a very radiant way. And I'm thinking to myself, gosh, what is that? What is this all about? First off, I've never seen a crystal skull before or heard about it. And then this happening. In that same moment as I was thinking that, there was this light appears in the end of my hall. It's about 6 foot tall, and it speaks to me telepathically. It says, I have come here to awaken you. And I'm listening to this, and I'm looking at this light. It says, it is time for you to come forward. You have much work to do. And the funny part was it even says you are 2 years behind schedule, and we will be fast-tracking you. So if you can imagine that. It was very interesting. And so in that moment, I'm just shaking my head thinking this must be a bad dream or something. And I shake it off, and I go into the bed and just sleep it off. At 4 o'clock in the morning, I bolt up out of bed, just straight up, and I'm looking around. And I just felt the strange energy. I didn't know what it was. I never wake up at nighttime like that. And it took me about an hour to fall asleep. And eventually I did. I got back to sleep, and the next morning I was going off to do the work that I do, which is I do developing. I was working on a golf course community, and I was painting the show home with some friends. And went out there and painted away all day. And that night I was supposed to meet up with a friend of mine, and he was having his mother over for the evening. He hadn't had her over for 13 years. She had an accident in the wintertime, broke both her legs, her arms, was in the snowbank upside down, the poor thing. And they had her in a home because they thought that she was crazy. She had a near-death experience and came back, and she was never really the same. and nobody understood here. So I'm coming up to the house. It's 8:30 at nighttime. It's getting late, and I'm thinking, no, I want to go home. I'm going to drive by it. And as I'm driving up to the house, there's this voice again in my head saying, stop, go in. And I'm ignoring it because I want to go get some rest, get home. It's an hour's drive to get home. And as I'm pulling up beside the house, as I'm driving by it, it's saying, stop, go in. Louder. And I'm still ignoring it. I said, no, forget it. I'm not going there. And then I drive by the house. It's like, stop, like a command. It was no more being nice. It was like, you need to do this. So, okay. So I stopped, turned around, and went back in. I get to the house, and my friend, he's there, greets me, and his mother's inside the porch up 3 steps into the kitchen. And she's elderly in her late 70s, and she's standing there. And I says, hi there, you remember me? Because I've known her years ago from high school as a high school friend. We'd visit often in his parents' house. And she says, oh, yeah, I remember you. And then she looks at me with this twinkle in her eye. She says, I knew you were coming. And I'm thinking to myself, how did you know I was coming? So I asked her. And she said, an angel came to me at 4 o'clock in the morning and told me you were coming and that you would be able to heal me and that I had to introduce you to 2 people. And it dawned on me in that moment that I felt that energy, that 4 o'clock is when I bolted up in bed. And I go, wow, this is amazing. So I sat and talked with her for about 3 hours. Her son couldn't believe it because he had written her off as crazy. But the thing was that she evolved to a higher level of understanding, of development, of awareness spiritually. And she was talking with angels and guides and all these different things, which I was starting to get into at the time. And so we made arrangements. I worked with her. She had trauma to the chest. She had loss of her balance and some of her memory. And so I did 3 sessions with her, and we restored those 3 different things. And then she said a couple of days later, she says, the angels told me now I can introduce you to these 2 people. So I said, great, sure enough. So 2 weeks later, we get together, I pick her up, we drive off to this house in the countryside in central Ontario, and we pull in into the driveway, and there's these 2 people come out, and they're in their 60s, both gray hair. You know, the lady had a roly-poly belly, and he looked like Santa Claus without a belly, with the beard and the hair. And the first thing she does, she comes up to me, she gives me a great big hug, and she says, there you are, Rata. We have been looking all over for you. So you can only imagine my surprise by being said those words and being indicated that that was who I am. And so I said, okay, I'm going to go along with this. I'm going to go inside and listen to these people and listen to what they have to say. And so she went on to say that we came from the stars, we came from the Pleiades in the beginning of time when Lemuria was created, and we came here to assist Mother Earth, to help her, because she was calling for help. And at that time, of course, the Pleiades star system, there's many different beings. There's both friendly and unfriendly, I would only imagine. And so we came forward, and then she started speaking to me in the Pleiadian language. And again, like I said, she explained that she was my sister and her husband was her celestial husband. We came here together, and we came here with Ptah, who is our father and our mother. And she explained that we're all just frequencies, and we're inhabiting these bodies here in the 3D world because we came here for a purpose. And then through her, telepathically, Ptah spoke. Said, we're grateful we found you, that you have come forward after this time. We have not been connected since you were killed back in ancient Egypt. When the high priests and priestesses took you, they killed you and ate your organs in a very gruesome detail. And we've been attempting to track you every lifetime, but this is the first lifetime that they've been able to find me. And I'm going, wow, what a story. What a story. So then it began. So then they began teaching me about energy. They began teaching me about how they would talk to me in this language of light and then translate it. And through time, I was able to, through some events, there's been many events that have occurred since then. I've been around the world, different places to activate different things. Machu Picchu, Easter Island, Adam's Calendar, South Africa, the Colosseum in Rome, Stonehenge. These are all different places where I'd gone to do work to assist Mother Earth and then some. And so through that time, I've been able to learn the language, the Pleiadian language, and of course many other languages. And this is, of course, where I came in with Hildegard, because Hildegard came and found me. She called me up through some mutual friends. And so it began. So the journey began, the story begins, and the adventure begins.
Oh, wow. That is really great. I really related to one thing you just said about being 2 years behind, because when I connected with my guides, I had basically been interfered with by the government or secret government, and I had an implant put in me when I was 7 to sort of retard my process because they knew I was coming. And
right.
It malfunctioned when I was about 45 years old. So my awakening is about 10 years, it was similar to yours. And they said they had to put me in an acceleration to catch up from where I had been retarded from that process. Although I had a lot of information that came in, I still didn't know how to connect to it. And so I went through a crazy period of time where I was just being massively downloaded and connected with a lot of guides to help me get this. Knocked flat a couple of times on my back with downloads, that were just pure energetic. And, it's like a cram course in the summer, college. To go through that. Yes. But it had to be done because there's processes there. I was trying to think of the name of the ritual you're talking about in Egypt because I recently ran into the term, and I'm going to try to remember it. But it is a ritual of trying to wipe a being out from literally the Akashic record, or at least the 3D record. And it was the ritual that was done, as you were talking about, that gruesome ritual. Because they were constantly trying to disconnect all of this information. And that would be my, second thing to talk about is, what guiding principle kind of, or what interference that we have that presents, that we get confronted with to try to transmute our mission. And I will offer up one example called compartmentalization, right? It's a military term, but it's done, all our information that we have in media, religion, politics, etc., is compartmentalized. It's in little packets, and they're constantly doing things to disconnect us from information because we live in a idiomaterial world of quantum hologram, and it is the connection one to another that accelerates, any kind of ascension or understanding or growth. It's connectivity. So the basic idea I was told, and I used automatic writing, also Hildegard, to help, sort out the voices in my head as well. I have a big stack of journals that got me through a lot. And one way they taught me this was compartmentalization is this. Come apart, mental ally, I say, shun. And it's the idea of how we have this principle where people join up in little groups and they go apart from each other, from the rest of the others, and they shun those other people. We see that all the time in politics right now, where we're going to take a group of people and we're going to shun them or say that they're wrong or some way. And as a result, we're all in these little, pockets of people. And, our deep spirit, our deep connective spirit is trying to push us toward integration. And integration is, of course, I don't want to say opposite, but it's the other process. And integration is enter, grace, and gratitude. We become part of grace, which means that we look at our human frailties and give each other some slack, And gratitude is we appreciate one another. You can even appreciate someone who's your, enemy or nemesis or, opposing force, because they will throw things into contrast for you to help you think through things. So, that would be my advice of, what processes are pushing against us and what is the remedy, so to speak. So if you want to think of a something like that, a process that makes it harder to do our mission, or we feel it gets in our way, or we get in the way of ourselves, whatever. And then how do you handle that and process that? So Hildegard, if you've got something along that line, that'd be terrific.
Oh, listen, I totally love what you just said, how you tore this word compartmentalization apart. Because for me, when I was sitting there thinking, what just happened to me? I just was looking for answers. Like I actively thought, maybe there's books about it, or maybe I have an addiction they haven't found yet, or maybe there's something out there. I went on this quest of finding answers, you know? And in this state of overwhelmedness, and the support services outside were fresh out of answers, I discovered that when the student is ready, and when I ask God, Allah, Muhammad, Buddha, Vishnu, whoever, like any kind of deity names that I had heard at some point in my life, I one day was sitting in my journal, writing my journal, and I said, now would be a good time to show yourself. Please help me. And I found it very interesting. Whenever I ask for something, it will show up. Yet it doesn't show up in the way I had imagined it would show up. So, for instance, one night I was awoken by an invisible hand. It felt very visible, but I was alone in my room, 3 little children in the house, nobody else there. And the little voice says, write. Respectively, it said écrit, the French word for write. I hadn't spoken French in like 20 years, and I wrote this story. And I was upset the next morning, and I said, hey, God, I don't know what you were thinking if you made me get up in the middle of the night to write this story. I disapprove. I want some real help. How am I going to pay buy the diapers next week? How am I going to pay my rent? I need to figure out how to keep these kids alive, you know. And so what I'm saying is, in the challenging situations that we are in, we have to acknowledge that A, we are grander than the situation, and we have created the situation. But I was stuck in fear, false evidence appearing real. And I discovered that my left brain had been so oversaturated with thoughts of fear. All the feelings I had were fearful. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. Oh my God, what's going to happen? Maybe I ought to have done that. Like the whole series of fear emotion that one can have. And again, through the journal, and in this particular story, the Never Enough story you alluded to in my intro, it made it quite clear that we are running on fear 99% of the time, or maybe 99.9% in my case. And all I had to do is realize that the left brain that seems to be feeding me all these negative thoughts was only able to process the already experienced. If I wanted to create something new, in this case, I had a broken body, 3 little children, barely enough money to feed them. I needed to start looking at who I was differently. I had seen myself as a victim of circumstance. I had actually had to reflect, how had I got here? I had married the love of my life. We had a beautiful home. We had 3 healthy children. There was so much to be grateful for. And yet my body had fallen apart. Somehow there was no more communication between my best friend and lover and sweetheart and the love of my life, to the point that I was so frightened of him that I took my kids and ran upon instruction from my space brother, Louis Marr. So when I arrived in my little house then, where I lived with mattresses and cardboard boxes and barely any furniture, I was not quite sure how I could exist in 3D life. And initially I was also getting very negative towards what came very constructively from Louis Marr and saying, dude, you're telling me I want for nothing? You, dude, could never have a body. And he said, you're quite right. I never had a physical incarnation on earth. But I learned by him guiding me to develop the attitude of gratitude for what is. You're not homeless. You have a roof over your head. It's the middle of winter. I left my house, I think it was minus 27, snowstorm, whatever. It's not a good time to be out in the park bench in Toronto in the middle of February when there's snow blowing. I was looked after. He kept his promise. Louis Ma gave me what I needed, not necessarily the way I had expected it would come. And so then what happened next, in my research for me, wanting to figure out what had just happened to me, the medical expert are fresh out of answers, the books fell off the shelf and I began to read. And things came to me. I suddenly was aware of, oh my God, how does the human body work? I never really knew. Nobody taught me. I don't know. I could tell you how a combustion engine works because I used to work for Volkswagen Audi Porsche in Germany way, way back when, but I didn't know how my body worked. So what I'm saying is, the first step is to understand that fear hooks us into the illusion of the 3D world that most of us created unconsciously. And the reality we are in today, and the reality I was in 25 years ago, and our listeners are in today, is an accumulation of the consequences of the choices we've made in the past. Whether these choices were made consciously or unconsciously. And so if I want to create a new reality, I need to start thinking different thoughts. I need to focus my mind on what do I want to accomplish. So my right leg wasn't working. I needed to develop the gratitude that I could have the function of the left one, and I had a broom in the house that I could use as a crutch. And these were all things where I gradually learned to get a handle on my thoughts. I think it was Deepak Chopra or Wayne Dyer, I don't know who said it once. Both of them at some point were at a lecture here in Toronto, and I was so excited because they said there's 60,000 thoughts a day an average person has. If we think the same thoughts over and over again, chances are we say the same things, we take the same action, we create the same reality. And that's where we are unhappy, some of us, I was certainly. And then when we are unhappy, we at least know that if I do the same thing tomorrow, I kept the same reality. And we have a frame of reference of victimhood and misery, but we are comfortable in it. What Louis Ma told me, he says, you got to focus now on creating something that wasn't there before. Your left brain is useless in the situation. You need to access your higher awareness, which is why I call my company later on Higher Awareness, because now I'm going into the heart. What do you feel like doing? When we look at what do we feel like and we spend just a little bit of our day doing something that feeds our soul, we suddenly see our situation outside change. It does take time, but over time, the 60,000 negative thoughts, oh my God, I'm not good enough, I'm not sure how I'm going to pay for this, and I'm not sure what I'm going to do, and oh my God, my mom doesn't talk to me because Catholics don't divorce, and I'm all alone on the world, and the world is out to get me. The more I thought that, the more the world developed or proved to me, self-fulfilling prophecies happened, that the world was out to get me. On an empty parking lot, my car got hit. And the guy didn't, or the lady didn't put a little note saying, oh, I'll pay your damage. So for me, it is becoming aware of what I think, because I think we have the power really is in how a human being uses what they're focused on, what they put their mind on. Shift away from fear, focus on visioning what you want, and develop an attitude of gratitude and replace these thoughts with love emotions. And over time, you create a totally new reality. One little thought, one little change in how we speak, one different action taken, and over time, the accumulation of those new habits create a whole new reality, if that makes any sense to you.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's really, really good. Mark, go ahead and tackle the question, and if you run into the break, we'll catch it on the other side, but very eager to hear your thoughts on our impediments and our remedies. Go ahead.
Well, and so far as myself moving forward through all of this awakening process, I found it was very difficult where I was living at the time in a small community that I really had no one to reach out to. And I feel that this is one of the biggest problems, and this is what we have noticed again at this conference we're at here in Ontario today, this weekend, that people just don't know where they can go to have a community, how they can express, how they can share without being ridiculed. For me, it was very fortunate that I had these two people, and they go by their star names, Sadia and Toonla, and they were there for me at most beckon and call. And I swear to God, if I did not have those two people, I would have been saying, okay, put the white jacket on and throw me in the rubber room, because this kind of stuff is just so out there. It was so not in my surroundings with friends and peers or anything that I was reading or had any access to or knowledge to whatsoever. And so it was through the years that they have been patient. They've been working with me. And the first 2 years were the hardest, I have to say. But it was after the first 2 years, as I was beginning to understand more and more of how energy works, of how I can feel, let's say, a negative energy field around me and to be able to send it away and to reclaim my positive energy field, because that seems to be one of the things that these, shall we say, beings who are out there that are latching on to spiritual people, is they're exchanging energy fields. And so they would put their dark one over top of me, and they would take my light energy field, and I would appear to be very dark and negative to people. People would avoid me. They wouldn't come up and talk to me because they felt this negative energy, which of course was never mine. It never belonged to me. Somebody pulled the switcheroo on me. And as I was learning how to cope with that more and more, I could actually begin to tell when it was happening, when this darkness would slip in and my field would slip out. And I was given the tools as to how to send this negative energy away and call mine back, which was very, very helpful. And in doing that, I was able to distinguish between the differences. And so I was very fortunate moving along. I guess everything is timing. Everything happens for a purpose and a reason. There was 12 people who came to me in the course of 6 months. And these 12 people were in the spiritual world. They were healing. They were doing channeling. They were doing Reiki. And they were very connected. They were telepathic. They were very, very in the know on a lot of things. And throughout the time, as I connected with these people, I would do a past life regression on them. And I would discover that we had a past connection. And the commonality was Atlantis. And these 12 people turned out to be the high council members of Atlantis who were in charge of the crystals and the energy fields. And I, at the time, was in Atlantis as well, and I was the one overseeing. I was the 13th one in charge of this group who was overseeing the crystals. And so we would have at least a group of people we could talk to. Now there was 13 of us who we communicate with each other, talk with each other, and we would do this on a weekly basis. And through the time, I was guided to do different meditations, and through the meditations, we started working with ley lines on the earth, started shifting energy grids, started moving different fields around and working with Mother Earth herself and her chakras, and so on and so on. So in finding these people was a saving grace to me, because throughout, that was a course of 4 years then, after my awakening. Most of my friends, they said, you're crazy. They left me. They cut me off. It was ugly. It really was. And I really had no one to turn to of my old crowd, my school buddies, my college friends, and just the social network that I had in my community was just, okay, we're not going to go there. We're not going to talk to Mark. He's off his rocker. I'll just let him go, because this was consuming me, if you can only imagine. This was like, wow, this is amazing. These things that we're seeing out there in this multidimensional world, which appear to be a hologram, and yet it appears to be real. And the reality appears to be a hologram because we can manipulate it. We can make changes. And so then you begin to question that question, is what is real? Is the reality a dream, or is the dream the reality, right? And so we began to get connected with different guides, which was also a saving grace. And these guides came from the stars. There were Arcturian guides. There were councils from Arcturus. There were councils from Sirius. There were councils from Lyra. And they were the Earth elders. And so we would get guidance from them of things to do, what we needed to do to move forward in what we were here to do. Because apparently we're not here just to awaken. We were here to do more than that, if you follow what I mean. It's like we have a purpose, we have a mission, and everyone has their own purpose and mission and understanding and awakening. And so it was through this, we were guided one time to go down to Mexico, and south of Cancun is a structure with the temples of Tulum. Okay. So there's 12 of us and myself in the group, and we're all given symbols. They can show up somehow through a book, through a movie, through a photograph. Just everyone has a symbol. And we go to this place, and it was a fall equinox, 2008, 2009. We go down there, and we have no clue what we're going down there for. We're going on trust, pure intuition and trust. And at the time, we get down there, and we're looking at this huge pyramid, and we all kind of get guided to a different point around the pyramid. And then we're just kind of watching the time and looking at the sun and what's going on and thinking, well, what's next? What's next? And then the next thing I know is coming through me is this energy coming up through my center, through my solar plexus, coming right up through my chest, and I start speaking this language, which at that time I had no clue what it was. It was it was like 2 or 3 syllables each time, and it was just pouring out of me for 10 minutes. What I found out afterwards, after the fact, that these were codes of light, that I am in fact a code carrier, and I release codes and things happen. All right? So what had happened was, it was like a light came down from the skies into the top of the pyramid, and it came down into the earth, and there was a blue crystal underneath this Tulum pyramid, which I had found out afterwards again that I had placed there at that time when it was being built. And what had come forward was the frequency and the energies of this vibration of the language of light. It was lost. We lost it here on earth a long time ago. And what I had found when we had lost it was back at the time of the Tower of Babel. When the Tower of Babel was destroyed, we had this language of light back then, which by the spoken word we could manifest and create instantly. And it was dispersed at that time. So what we had done in that moment in Mexico with those codes that I released was we brought this frequency back, which tapped into this crystal, which then created the resonance for the language of light to come back. And it was within 2 weeks of that all of us were speaking this language of light together. And so it expanded, right? So it expands, and we learn it, and we talk with each other, and we're each working together as a support group. So I find it very difficult if there is no support group. What can you possibly do? Because we would look at each other and say, okay, we're ready for the rubber room. Take us away, right? Because there was no support. And this is 7-8 years ago. Now it seems to be more and more common, right?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. we're finding each other. We're being drawn to each other by the frequencies, that we share. I know so many listening and myself have been through that process of pretty much losing our support system as we knew it from before. And it's very devastating, and I'm thankful myself also to the beings who came to me, many beings for different reasons, who taught me many things and helped me, keep my head together while I was learning and growing, and it's kind of like going through a cocoon experience. As I came out of that cocoon experience, and suddenly I could look around me and I could recognize my kindred spirits, the people around me who were going through the same process, or maybe they were teachers because they had been through the process. But I believe that, I'm watching the experience or movement pretty closely as it relates to disclosure. And I think that that is the next big step as a more generalized finding of each other, certainly through technology. And Hildegard, I have to say that I became aware. I am from that technology background. Oh, we got a break. We'll catch it on the other side at Sacred Matrix on Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com.
Radio at freedomslips.com. We'll be right back after this message.
Tune in Tuesdays at 12 noon Eastern on Studio A to hear Tammy Adams share her knowledge of an unknown realm on Talking with Your Angels. Join Tammy as she uncovers hidden secrets about the spiritual world of angels, ghosts, and other entities that have been with us longer than we know. Tammy is a psychic, a teacher, spiritual coach, a leader in her field, and will be sharing her information and stories with you. So join us on Tuesdays at noon on Studio A. With Tammy's guidance, you'll find out who has been watching over you from the other side, and soon you will be talking with your angels.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Yes, we're back on Sacred Matrix Radio. Normally you have with you Janet and Sasha Lessin, wonderful people. Today I'm with you, Karen Christine Patrick, and want to remind you to go to the website freedomslips.com, go to Revolutionary Radio's donate page, donate to this fine network and also to the show, because we need to keep this going with wonderful guests, wonderful stories, and, an opportunity to change the planet. And I'm here with Hildegard and Mark telling their experience, their stories. And I want to give us all a term to work with that you might enjoy. We have experiencers on the programs that I'm normally on that are just starting out. And then what you're listening to tonight is a term I call integrated experiencers. It's people who've been through a process of having their entire world paradigm integrate this new information from other realms that really can help us. I feel often humans are a bit stuck and need some outside help, and in fact may have even been interfered with. And the idea is, normally we have something maybe like Prime Directive, for races growing up. We're a kind of a adolescent stage. civilization. And basically, we've been a bit interfered with, and we're getting some intervention. So thank you to all of our guides who are helping us. And that would be the next thing I'd like to have us talk about. And because sometimes, we talk in general euphemistic terms about our guides. I'll share my own very specific guides and names because it is quite diverse. And I think that our invisible friends, as I call them, come to us at different times and in different ways to help us understand things and learn things. And, some of them are great comforters and healers. Some of them are Zen masters that kind of make us snap to and get our minds sharp. And others have information that I don't even know if we're ready to integrate in this lifetime. It's so far out there, but it's very inspiring. So I'll share a few of mine, and I hope Hildegard and Mark would like to share about theirs, because it's relationships. And just like when we go onto the internet and we make connections in internet social chat rooms and whatnot, that's one of the ways many experiencers are finding each other. I call it the internet, INNERNET. We go through the internet and we connect with personalities and beings out there on all different levels of manifestations. Hopefully don't talk too long to the creeps, because there's a few of those about. But you can just block them, right? And so my own story was that I was from a religious background. So if I thought a being was talking to me other than God or the Holy Spirit, it was going to be a negative experience, maybe a demon or something. And I finally decided that I was so desperate to know, what was going on in my life, which was everything that I had been taught, didn't make sense to me. It didn't make a coherent system because my experiences were different than the system of thought, religion, and philosophy that I had been taught. So I was pretty wide open I was asking whatever's out there, up there, in here, whatever, communicate with me and help me understand. I started doing automatic writing, which was great because I would sort of hear a few words at a time and write them down in my mind telepathically. And that was a pretty frenzied process. Some people feel like their hand is moving. That wasn't really my experience, but that happens. And then I had a chance to read what was written and reflect on it, and that was the perfect initial experience for me. And finally, I accepted what I was receiving was helpful to me and that these beings had my best interest at heart, so I began more telepathic, direct contact, which is kind of where I'm at today. And the first beings that contacted me was actually a soul group, and they called themselves, and it was funny you were talking about, you hadn't spoken French. I learned a little French in high school, and these beings identified as les joyeux, or the joyous, and they were a group of beings who had gone through 3D reality just like we had and gone through it, and it was just like an older person talking to a younger person through adolescence, but it gets better. And so they were just saying our planet, our civilization is going through stages that many other planets and civilizations had gone through in the past, and they focused on the transition from a scarcity, fear-mindedness in our economy and whatnot to abundance. How do we make that transition? I got pages and pages of notes about that. Another being that came into my life was an ancestral being. I've had quite a few ancestral beings that came through. I'm Native American and Irish, so I've got quite a few. Once I opened that door, it seems like there was too many that wanted to talk to me. But this was a grandmother, Native American grandmother spirit from my Cherokee heritage that called herself the grandmother wheel, like the medicine wheel, or that the wheel turns, and that's what she always said, the wheel turns. And then I knew I was talking to her. And she just helped me with home life and domestic things, but she had such an aspect of Mother Earth, loving and nurturing. And one of the best things she said to me was about our hands as our great manifestation tool, because we can use our minds to use our hands to manifest creativity in this world, and I'm an artist, so that meant a lot to me. And finally, this weekend, I spoke with Janet and Sasha Lesson. We did an online conference together, and I finally came out with one of my ancestors, which is an Anunnaki ancestor, which, believe me, I went into that contact kicking and screaming and going, what? But it was a very, very valuable contact. And he called himself a pseudonym, which was Godesh. Godi, meaning from the Nordic tradition, is a priest king. And Godesh or Kadesh is from the Hebraic terminology for holy or set apart. And by just working through his name, I learned a lot of things about, the main thing he talks to me about is warrior type things. He was a warrior in general. And so, the way of the warrior. So I've learned how to stand up for myself and be strong and to deflect negativity and to actually appreciate people who come against me as an opportunity to learn more about myself. So these all and some others have come to teach me different things at different times. So I'm hoping Hildegard and Mark, and we'll start with you, Hildegard, if you can share some of your specific beings that you've had a relationship with who have helped you.
Yeah, my pleasure, Karen. And I find without, like Mark alluded to it earlier as well, without these new influences, if I may call it that, the first one was Louis Marr, who made clear what was going on. You had an energy exchange and so on and so forth. And then he introduced me to Ashtar Athena, who were, I was told about the Greek goddesses and the divine feminine, and there were all these things and how important it was for human beings to actually nurture their young. And she gave me all sorts of insights as to how the planet's females had been manipulated to abandon this divine role, to nurture life, and to really spend time with the children. And I learned so many things. It didn't all happen just in one session. I think Athena was about 2 years or so off and on that she said, oh, here, this is how you have to do this. Like, I didn't know how to fold laundry or to iron a shirt or, that you have to attend to the garden. Like all of these things that women have to do, or a child had a birthday and I didn't know what that means and what celebrations are. So Ashtar Athena would always come through to me, give me a little bit of a philosophy lesson, if you so will, about how our society has been degenerating in our values, that we didn't have people first, we would profits over values. Our values were profits over people, excuse me. And that it was crucial for me as part of my vision to keep my focus on nurturing these children. And everything to do with that nurturing role came from her. What was interesting, though, was that, here I'm still trying to figure out what happened to me. What disease do I have? Is it a disease I have and the medicals haven't really caught up on it or whatever? I would end up, let's say, sitting on a park bench outside the children's kindergarten waiting for the bell to ring. And a person would sit next to me. I'd never seen this person before, didn't have children in my kids' class or kindergarten classes. But then the things that I'd been thinking about or stewing about or concerned about or tried to figure out, this stranger would suddenly start talking about that. Earlier, Mark was saying that these two people showed up in his life, right? And without them, he would have been really lost. Well, for me, I had an additional physical guide, and there were different people. There could be a woman who dropped her wallet in the grocery store, and then she started to talk about something, and I'm going, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me. This is so helpful. I'm going through such a difficult time. I don't want to bore you with the details. And then this perfect stranger was becoming for 5 minutes my guide so that I could just have a little bit more hope that maybe there is an invisible God, or maybe there is a force out there in the universe, or maybe there's a grand plan I haven't clued into, and these people were put in front of me every time I needed something, or every time I was so low that I thought, oh my God, somebody, Mack truck, come run me over. I can't handle this anymore. And sure enough, in the most weirdest of places, it could be the gas bar attendant. In those days, somebody would actually serve you at the gas bar. And this gentleman would talk to me, and I'm going, thank you so much for talking to me. This is so helpful. So these were not people that were with me all the time. Ashta Athena was a telepathic connection. She was with me and in charge of the domestic challenges I had. But then these strangers showed up everywhere. And on top of that, books would jump off shelves, literally. Or I sit in a subway and there is this book, no person, empty subway card. And there's this book, I walk to the seat, and there's this book is lying next to me, and I pick up the book, and actually that introduced me to Cryon way back when. And I'm inhaling this book. Then I meet somebody comes next to me and says, oh, nice book. You should also read Barbara Marciniak. I said, what? Can you write this down? And then I read the book Bringers of the Dawn. Like things like that kept happening. And that encouraged me that there was some comfort to be found in the unknown, that there were guides coming along. And what sticks out is the book by Neil Walsh. I think it's called The Little Sun and the Soul. And that book helped me realize, oh my God, I was going to divorce at the time and didn't have a good time with it, to put it mildly. And after reading this book, I suddenly saw the father of my children with such compassion. I couldn't be angry anymore. I was able to set boundaries, but I didn't have the panic attack or the nervousness when I saw his phone number on my phone. Oh my God, what is he going to do now? I previously had been just panicked simply when the phone rang because I felt instantly attacked. But after I read this book, again, a guide for me can come in different forms. This particular book helped me get over that it's all his fault if only he would. And I got that I had engaged him on a soul level before we were embodied to make himself dark, to do things that I perceived as not nice. And when I had that piece of information, my relationship with him changed so that I could just be with it in a more unemotional kind of way. I became more and more neutral, regardless whether he was saying something nice or something nasty. I just didn't have to react anymore. So guides for me, just to close it off, come in different forms. There's 2 telepathic ones. Now I've only Louis Marr, who is in charge of 250 Andromedan walk-ins. And he is with me all the time. Like I've been in Europe and got scared walking in the road in Geneva one day. I was with so many negative people, and I say, no, you got to take a cab. And I'm saying, no, I'm going to go and take the bus. And then as I turned the corner, dark alley, above the Geneva train station was this huge white silver cloud. And I heard quite loudly Louis Marr saying, we've got you covered, not to worry. Change your thoughts, change your energy. You did the right thing saying to this. You see what I mean?
Yes.
It's fun. Like over time, when you warm up to it, life gets really exciting. But it took me at least 5-6 years until I got to the point of saying, yes, look at that. Thank you, God, Allah, whoever you are, because I didn't have any other concepts in those days. You know what I mean? I just thought God, an invisible hand of God was reaching down, putting me in front of a station, a person in a grocery store from whom I got so much positive energy that I could make another hour. Like I lived in minute compartment, then 15-minute compartment, then 30-minute compartment. And, Norman Vincent Peale, I think, or is it the fellow who wrote the book on the highly the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, who said, if you compartmentalize your life, not to segregate and separate and judge, but you can only process 1 minute at a time. Don't let your mind run ahead or backward. Really be focused. Edgar Tolle talks about it in his writings. Be here now. Because then we don't get overwhelmed as much. If I had to do an entire day, I wouldn't get out of bed. I couldn't cope. So I would just cope to get the kids dressed, or I would just cope to see whether I can figure something out for breakfast. And then when that's done, the next deadline was have one in school and the next one in kindergarten. And when that happened, the baby and I would just go and sit by the lake and do nothing. And I would sit there with my journal book while the baby is sleeping and write out what information. Afina, now what? What do I do now? The baby is sleeping. Do I need to do something? What is expected of a woman when the baby is sleeping? Is it okay to sit on this bench, or do I have to be in the house? Tell me. And then I would write everything down, and she'd say, well, on the way back, you should go by the grocery store because you're running out of milk or whatever. And by the way, you shouldn't buy this milk anymore. Go to that store on that corner, and you meet a Korean lady and ask her for help. And then I would do that. I go up Kipling Avenue, and then I go at Eglinton and Kipling in the little plaza, and there was a Korean lady, and she showed me millet. And she said, you need to make this for your children, and you mix it with banana and whatever. Don't buy the powdered, I don't know what they call it, this baby food when you have a 6-month-old. Formula stuff. Yeah. And also then later when you put them on solids, they want you to mix this powder with water, and the baby would continuously spit it out. Smart kid, right? Didn't want that stuff. And the Korean lady solved my problem. She therefore became my best friend,
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's great, anyway, that day-by-day guidance. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, minute-by-minute, day-by-day guidance. And it takes a while, and then you gain confidence because even though you don't intellectually, logically know where the guidance comes from, but it happened last week. Maybe today when I drive a car and go somewhere, maybe something else will happen, So rather than being panicked about, the people out there, they are not in their body, I was kind of trying to figure out how this magic of my ET friends was going to who they were going to put me in front of next, and what was I to learn. You see what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Just quickly, I'll say I had to make a second move in 2 years, and the one before had been very harrowing, yet I got through it, just like you said. And so when the next one was looming up before us, I was like, whatever that was before, that's what I'm going to trust. It's going to get me through. So thank you so much, Hildegard, for sharing that, because that's really a very practical day-by-day thing to watch for. Mark, what would you like to share in terms of your invisible friends and guides? Hello, I hope Mark is with us.
Yes, I'm here. I just had to unmute. And so as far as working with guides, it's been more so working with my higher self, the higher self being Ra-Ta, who was ingrained in me upon this awakening, so to speak. There was, I would have to say it was 3 years later, I was in the woods with some friends out on Vancouver Island. We were out with some big, magnificent trees, and it was all of a sudden, Spirit decided that it was going to work with me and to awaken the DNA within my body and allow the integration of Ra-Ta to fully enter within myself and for me to integrate that. And so it was like learning how to walk all over again. It was hanging onto a tree. I didn't know how to stand. I was thinking, okay, move one foot forward first, then move the other foot forward, then the next one, and then the next one, and then learning how to use my hands again for eating. This is a fork. How do I pick it up, and what do I do with it? And then, for writing and remembering all my codes, forget about it, and phone numbers, that was gone. It was a whole different part of me that awakened, which literally wiped out a lot of the hard drive, shall I say. And so in moving forward, these two halves had to integrate together and to become one, and that went on over the course of months to come into terms with that. And so as I would go on, then I could check in with Ratha and say, okay, so what do we need to do? Who do we need to connect with? And instantly the knowing would be there. And I would say what I had to say and do what I would have to do, working with my council members and just working outside of the house. And it would be more so guided in aspects of the mission, the purpose of raising the consciousness, of working with the grids and the energies and the crystals on the planet, which was basically my focus. So I went through that stage for a couple of years, and then it was fall 2014, where working with Sadie and Toonie, my two companions who I had met at first, and then it was telepathically the Ancient Ones came through. And they had told me that I needed to purify for 3 weeks, cleanse, fast, because you're getting upgraded. And I'm thinking, wow, this is interesting. So I listen. I trust that I'm in good hands the whole time. And I took the 3 weeks. I didn't contact anybody. I ate wholesome foods, drank only water, looked after myself, rested, meditated. And after those 3 weeks, then again, they came through telepathically through my celestial sister, Sadie, and her husband. And they spoke very firm. They said, and it was at this time that the last tweaking of my DNA within myself, with the assistance of Source, to open up and allow the full entry of my memories of Ratha to awaken within my body. Now, I didn't want to go through with it. I was rejecting it and saying, no, I can't do this. It's too much work. It's too big for me. This mission is too crazy. And I was given the third degree entity. You shall accept this mission. You shall take this frequency. You shall be with it and allow it to open within you, because the entire fate of the planet and the universe depends on you. Now, you think about a light load to take when you're told that. Wow, that was heavy. So I allowed the energy to shift within my body. I allowed the frequencies to change. And what this did was it opened me to many new gifts, many awakenings. I was able to, when I do past life regressions with people, if they were a native from, let's say, Dakotas and they spoke Lakota language, I could speak Lakota language with them in that instant. Somebody was speaking Hopi language from a past lifetime, I could speak Hopi language with them. And this opened me up to all these different languages that I could speak. And again, this is one of the reasons why Hildegard and I got together. And I would like to touch on that a little bit here too, and hopefully we can go into that before we end the show, is with the language of the Andromedas. But before we got there, I went through a series of events this year, again with a higher aspect of myself and my DNA awakening, and that was with the Ptah frequencies and consciousness. And so the Ptah energy was awakened within my DNA, and again, having the original DNA blueprint of Ptah through my bloodline back to ancient Egypt. It was activated when, in April of this past year, there was 4 inverted pyramid-style ships flying over top of the pyramids in Giza, and they were there for 4 hours. And they were sending tones and signals into the pyramid chambers. And there's some very beautiful pictures of this and images on YouTube, of course, out there. And I'm just watching it on fascination. And I said, wow, it's Ptah. He's here now, finally, with our family and with our own ships. And the next day, I'm looking at some pictures, and I get triggered by pictures. Something reminds me, it's like in my contract to be here, I'm going to show you this picture, you're going to get triggered, you're going to say codes. So I saw these pictures from inside the pyramids of these huge granite rocks with writing on it, and I started speaking the codes, and the codes of light for about 15 minutes. And it was 20 minutes later that the frequencies within my body were activated, the DNA, and allowed the frequencies of the Ptah to enter fully inside of me. And so Ptah has been my guide since April, and it was shortly after that when Hildegard contacted me through some mutual friends. And there was purpose for that. And Lou Amar from Hildegard's space shuttle said in our session when I worked with Hildegard that they were looking to search me out so I could assist this vessel called Hildegard. And so these have been the guides that have been working with me and have been helping me through all of this. But what I'd like to do is, if possible, maybe have Hildegard share with the audience how it was that we connected, how we did the past life reading, and then perhaps we could connect with Louis-Marr on the ship so he could give us his perspective. I think that would be a very good way to end.
Yeah, that'd be great. I was kind of wondering where to go, and I think what I was sensing is like, what's going on right now? You know, how is the current thing that you guys are involved with getting started? What seems to be the intention, and where do you think it's going? I'd love to hear that. Go ahead, Hildegard. I guess we'll be going first.
Sure. Yeah, this is really, again, I've come to believe that indeed everybody right now on this planet has made a plan before they came into the body. And it's almost like you have like a timer set that at certain stages, certain people show up and you will recognize them. And then you don't really know immediately what you do with them. But then over time, it will show up and become quite evident what you have to do together. And we all are teachers for each other, right? Sometimes I'm the student, sometimes Mark is the student and I'm the teacher, and then it's the reverse. So in this particular case, I had a lady from Northern Ontario on the show at that channel, and she thanked me for coming on. We had a great time, and she emailed, in her email, she said, and I have a sense that you absolutely ought to call this number. You and this gentleman must connect. And I called Mark up and I said, well, we have this mutual friend. She told me I should contact you. I have no idea why. You know, what are you into? I do this. I'm connected with thatchannel.com, and I'm always looking to interview people. What kind of business do you have, or what? And that channel is all about bringing out the wisdom from within the guests that we put on. It's similar to your station. We are a good news station. We want to bring information that inspires, uplifts, gives hope, if nothing else. There's enough bad news out there, and we want to bring something that you might not get anywhere else. And so we initially started the conversation about what that channel is all about and who I am and what I'm doing there. And then I told him I have a connection to Andromeda, and I have been guided by this gentleman who is kind of my handler. I'm saying gentleman is my brother from Andromeda, and home planet being Botes, which is a constellation in the Andromeda galaxy. Arcturus is one of the bigger stars. Maybe many more people will be familiar with Arcturus. And so Mark, all excited, he says, can you take me on the ship? And I'm saying, I don't know. Like, I don't remember having been there with my body, but the minute I think of it, I can be there. If you manage to come along, I don't know how you would do that, but why not? So I spoke to Louis-Marr and I said, hey, listen, I have this gentleman and he apparently can speak Andromedan. I personally don't speak Andromedan. I didn't think I could. And so then Mark and I together go onto this spaceship in our etheric body, not with the physicality. Mark was at this point, 300-400 kilometers away from where I was. And we're sitting on our respective phones and computers. And the conversation with the Andromeda, I call it the little commuter ship. There's 5 people on it, and they are keeping a watch on me, let's say, and the others they're in charge of. And so Mark starts to talk in some funny language. And I'm kind of going, what is he talking about? So I'm talking to Louis-Marr telepathically and saying, what's Mark talking about? And Louis-Marr says, never mind, don't even strain your little brain because it will fry all your circuits. Let us talk, I'll tell you later. And so Mark is talking through the telephone line in my ear, and I don't hear anything from Louis-Marr. He's talking say something, but he told me not to listen to him because I didn't want to fry my brain. And so once Mark was done, he said to me, and you can do this as well, and I can help you with these codes. And I'm just thinking, this is all very crazy. Talk about thinking I'm mentally ill. Like, I thought I was just losing my marbles all over again. It was like I'd been catapulted back into, 1990, where I thought maybe there's something wrong with me. But in a very short period of time, Mark did something, and you need to speak to that, Mark, what you did, because I don't know. I just know that now when Mark and I talk, I can always connect. Shina kula nanata, kita tu kikara namananala tu, ikuti tasanu kula namananata. So what I've just said is, it seems that he has opened the door to a whole new language. Like I at some point was able to speak fluently French, German, and English. My French is a little rocky. But now Mark seems to have opened something in me that lets me say things that I don't even really oftentimes understand. Sometimes I can say the English, but sometimes I don't know what it is, and my mouth doesn't seem to behave the way it does when I'm speaking to you now in English. It was like this weird disassociated feeling. It was like I had suddenly I wasn't in charge of my mouth anymore. I can't speak English at the speed that these codes come out. So Mark, if you would be so kind to take it away and enlighten us, because I've just learned this, 8 weeks ago? So I am not really sure how to intelligently speak about this.
Okay.
Thank you, Mark. Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So what I've done and what I do is, again, it's through intention, is after speaking with Luamar in the native language of Andromedan, it was agreed that I would assist Hildegard in awakening inside her brain what needs to be awakened so that she can actually speak these words, understand these words, assimilate these words, and then to translate. So what it is, it's a tweaking between the pineal gland and the pituitary gland. And so there's a connection that's missing, shall we say, within the human brain, and it needs to be activated energetically. And this is done from outside source, of course, and so this is what I do. I do this with people. I activate them to their home languages from different planets. And so in working with Hildegard, I put the intention out, okay, so now I'm going to tweak you here. It's going to come through from the pineal to the pineal to the pineal gland, and we're going to join a circuit together. And then as I have that intention, I speak the codes of light. Again, when I speak codes of light, things happen. So it's an activation in changing, as we call this third dimensional hologram, to operate and manipulate it the way I like it to. And so this is what I would call tweaking. And so I did this the first time with her. And I said, okay, let it go 24 hours, so we'll let your DNA coding reprogram, and we're going to see what it's like. And so at the end of the session, when we were talking with Luamar, he said something in Andromedan, and she repeated it to me, and so I would speak to him, and then he would speak back through her in Andromedan. So that actually helped her with the motor skills now of using her lips and the sound in her mouth to say these words which would relate to frequencies, which is the way of translating the thought pattern into a way of understanding what is being said between each other. And so I had her practice
Mark,
that. Yes.
Sorry, could I just ask something? So is this then for me just to, like, I'm speaking codes to open more inside my DNA, because my understanding was from Luamar that in Botas we don't use really language because we are all telepathic. There is no language beyond the third dimension per se.
Right. And so it's not codes. It's actually a frequency, a language which then translates into a thought which gives you the telepathic essence. So it's a sound which is related to what you're getting telepathically. So what we're doing is we're actually expressing it in a language, a frequency, as well as receiving it in our receptors within our mind.
Okay, that makes sense.
And so this is what's going on, right? And so what had happened was then after the next day, well, you can explain what happened to you the next day when you were looking at yourself in the mirror.
Well, it was funny because I was in the shower and I was drying my hair in front of the mirror, and my mouth started to say things. And I didn't know what it was. And I had to laugh because you're standing in front of your mirror and your mouth's doing something, but I'm not really intending to speak. You know, when I speak to, I call your number, Karen, I dial your number, and I expect to speak to you, and I have that thing going on in my head that now I'm going to say, hello, how are you, you know. But that didn't happen. And it was really weird because in the days to follow, whether I was driving the car or I'm walking down the grocery store aisle, in my head, suddenly these 3-letter words, and most of these codes, words, seem to be 3 letters. And then after Mark and I had practiced this a little, suddenly I realized I wrote Louis Mar wrong because it's L-U-I and then M-A-R. So there's a little gap, L-U-I, gap, M-A-R. So 3 letters on one side, 3 letters on the other. And again, he just gave me this label. I haven't quite figured out what this actually means. But I noticed when I listened to Mark, the sounds seemed like they only had 3 letters. And I couldn't figure that out because in the English language, in German and French, we have more letters in the word sometimes, or sometimes you have less. But they are all 3.
So you guys, I'm really fascinated to hear this because I really haven't talked about it on the radio before. But when I met particularly my guide, Godi, it came from a period of time in which I was doing soul singing, so I was singing in glossolalia or unknown languages. I used to sing in my car because I could hear myself really good. The windshield would bounce the sound back at me. And suddenly my voice dropped in really low frequency because Godi happens to be about 12 feet tall, so his voice is low. And I began to sing in the language that's somewhat like Klingon, and it was very strange. And then I spoke in English, and he introduced himself through me, so this would have been the first time I voice channeled, if I recall. And then afterwards, there were a number of times when he said, well, I'm going to be working with you in frequencies. So again, I would be speaking this language or singing in tones. Sometimes it was actually physically uncomfortable because when we speak now, we don't tend to use our entire face in quite the same way that they do. And, you know, of course they're telepathic, but speech is used for a couple of things in a telepathic way. And one of them is activating frequencies, and the other one is contracts. They would make a binding contract verbally, and of course they can remember. It doesn't matter how long the contract is. Their memory is better than ours. We've got to write everything down and cheat. But basically that is their contract language as well, the formal language. And so I learned quite a bit through this frequency experiments or activations that I went through as well. So your story is just very interesting, and I think one thing that came was a takeaway from that experience is kind of how limited we think and limited we speak and feel and put our feeling in our language, because the languages we speak right now are disconnected languages. So we're dealing with a situation of a disconnect from a mother tongue. We're speaking like subsets of a language. Or, you know, if every one of us spoke only a small amount of the language that was available to us. And that as a result, because of this, it's a form of the compartmentalization, again, then one of the number one problems with our countries talking to each other about, how to achieve peace, or couples trying to work through their, various household problems and financial problems maybe. Communication is the biggest challenge that we have. We don't communicate as well as we'd like to with our words. And part of it is we have to get our hearts connected through our thoughts and our words. So this was something I learned from that experience, but I sure wish I had a buddy. You guys got a buddy system going, and I think that's fantastic. So any more you'd like to talk about that?
Yeah, actually, Karen, I would like to add on to that. So what I'd like to do is to ask Luamar a question, and I'm going to speak in the language of the Andromedan, and with Hildegard here, and then Hildegard, if you would be so kind then to connect telepathically with Luamar and have him give us their perspective perhaps on this conversation, what we're having about languages, maybe shed some insight or whatever else he wishes to say at this point in time.
Yeah, okay, let's do that. And so for me to connect with Luamar, it's just, boom, it's there. Like my eyes are open. I don't have to go into a deep trance or anything. It's simply, I could look forward or I could turn my head to the right. It's as simple as that. So shina la na ku tikata kudla la manaka ituna silamu lina nuka tika salamana.
Titrine eti kru tutu karakta trene ekini kichat rodono tu kayeta ana turanata taranata.
Very, very happy to be given the opportunity to have the vehicle address a greater audience. Beloved friends on earth, we would love to let you know that you are not alone. You are much loved. You are supported in ways that you can currently not even begin to comprehend. And what we would like to let you know, and that's why, again, I particularly appreciate that this particular sister of mine has the opportunity to share her experience as a walk-in, because she was sent to this planet in particular to be a support to the walk-ins that are in need of support. She had it extremely difficult because she was more or less the first one to jump from the ship into the mud puddle. I use the analogy of mud because three-dimensional reality is very difficult. In that it was not necessarily actually intended for it to be populated the way it is now. Reality per se and creation was not to go below the fifth dimension, where people had unity consciousness, where people communicated telepathy, and it would go beyond the scope of the timing that we are here allotted right now as to what happened to planet Earth. But I do know that you have, as part of the Aquarius radio, the experts who have written extensively about the Anunnaki connection and the history, the true history of the human race, which obviously is not commonly known yet, but in times to come will be illuminated to all of you. Suffice it to say that many of you might feel lost, many of you might feel there is no hope, you are economically strapped, you might be physically uncomfortable, you may be severely displeased with your accommodations and living experiences right now. However, suffice it to say that what you hear in your traditional media is simply created for you to be stuck in fear. Fear is the vibration and the illusion that keeps the illusion alive, if I may allow to say it that way. Once you've come out on the other side, and I'm extremely happy and pleased with my sister Hildegard that she has not destroyed the vessel. She has actually followed the guidance of her journal, and in due time she actually forgot to journal. She didn't need to journal every day for help because she developed the skill of living as a human in the physical body, and actually got to the point where she began to have a little bit of joy, having the ability to be in that physicality. She began to enjoy the beauty of this planet, which when you are in fear, when you are led to believe you're not good enough, you don't have what it takes, you don't have the right education, you have the wrong religion, or you had the wrong parents, or you come from a different culture than where you currently might make your home. All of those are irrelevant for what is actually lying before you. And we ask you to please eliminate judgment. The moderator of this discussion previously alluded to the word compartmentalization, dividing. People only know one tiny little bit of the whole. The philosophers in the 16th century, René Descartes, came up with this philosophy of pieces are seemingly non-related. The earth is no longer considered to be alive. People in the Middle Ages of your timelines had some sort of a reference for the body of Mother Earth. They had an understanding of the web of life, of the interconnectedness of all people, of all life forms. Certainly those who you call the indigenous peoples of all continents were quite aware of the Great Spirit, and they could not understand why some people from a distant land that had different appearance than they had wanted to trade land for beads or special liquor. So suffice it to say, all of these attempts to segregate, to separate, were very well orchestrated for a very specific reason, namely to prevent you from understanding the godly aspect, the God spark within. So you were limited and held hostage, so to speak, in a third dimensional reality in which no matter how much you would struggle, no matter how much you would work, how hard and how long you would work, you would never be able to comfortably live. Let me assure you, from our perspective, and for those of you who are not had the chance to listen to this vehicle before, I am her support system, so to speak, on a commuter space ship that is outside the atmosphere of the Earth. It's not very big. It's probably just the size of 2 or 3 football fields. And you must understand that some motherships can be 500,000-600,000 kilometers in diameter. And then we have other ships that have various motherships inside them, the size of which goes up to 10,000 kilometers in your measurement unit. So these are dimensions and sizings that you might not necessarily agree with, you might not have heard of. It's at this point not relevant, but I want you to know that you are looked after. Each and every one of you has an invisible support team, and when you call on them, as this vehicle did, pay attention. There is a saying in your world, God's voice doesn't come out of a ghetto blaster. Your guidance is whispered to you ever so subtly, or it's a feeling, or it's you're reading a message on a milk carton, or you switch on your radio or your television box or your computer, and suddenly something shows up and you don't know why, and you're going, wow. So everybody has a different way of tuning into their guidance system, and we want to let you know, whatever you've learned about the story of this vehicle, she raised 4 children by nothing else but what the message said in the journal book. She now believes and trusts me because she trusted me with her life and that of her children, because she didn't know what to do and how to look after them. And she still has her fears and her challenges on occasion. in particular when it comes to public speaking and speaking the codes that we are so grateful Ptah enabled her to bring about. So whatever the message out of your conventional medias are, you peoples of Earth have the ability to bring about peace by bringing about unity consciousness. The Palladians are 200 years ahead of you. That's why you have many challengers and helpers from the Palladians. You have helpers from various realms, dimensions, and worlds. And know that when the human changes their mind, when the human develops love in their heart, compassion and empathy for self first and foremost, does away with judgment of self and therefore will be unconditionally loving and accepting of the others, peace is an absolute possibility that you do not have to wait for much longer. So with that, we thank you, Ptah, for organizing this gathering, for supporting my sister in this process, and we hope we will be given an opportunity to communicate with you soon. Shina kunalalata, ikatu, kitata, nunalimananatu. These are just codes that I want our listeners, our audience to take in, and we kindly invite you, dear Ptah, to conclude this message with your coding, and we say thank you, thank you, thank you. Much love and light to you all, and we are indebted to all of you to have volunteered to come here and facilitate bringing this unity consciousness about, so that all of those who desire to go into the next step of their evolution may do so. Shinata kita tunaladora.
Tatrena tatriono otu krutata trene ikiacha. And I too, Ptah, in saying it is a great privilege and honor to have the listeners follow along with us to hear and know what is being said from myself, from Luimar, from the Andromedans, our families above watching us. So, thank you very much, Hildegard. And
thank you, Karen, for having us. I'm not sure how much do we still have on the clock. Go ahead, give us your feedback, maybe.
Just a few minutes. Occasionally, once in a while, my phone will click out, and if I don't finish out the show, I apologize for that. John, you have to help me there. But I wanted to say that was fascinating, amazing, uplifting. Thank you to Luimar and Ptah and to Hildegard and Mark. I'm sure that really touched people. And I guess for the last part, we'd just like to give you a chance to tell the people how to get a hold of you, or any websites that you wanted to tell us, or anything, information for contact.
Yeah, I can be reached by HVON, Bootes, BOOTES, @gmail.com. And the website I will then pass along. It's Higher Awareness, HIREAWRENESS.com. But it can shoot me an email and we'll talk.
Oh, that's great. Mark, let us know how to contact you.
Yes, indeed. The listeners can contact me through my email address, which is all one word, selfquesthealing@gmail.com, and that's SELFQUESTHEALING, Self-Quest Healing. And another thing, too, which we're putting together for listeners and those who wish to wake up to higher awareness, is our Facebook page called Sophia's Gathering, and that's spelled SOPHIA''S, Gathering, GATHERING. And this is where we're looking for those so-called 144,000 light workers to help and assist with the energy frequencies of the planet, of Mother Earth, of Gaia, of Sophia, so that we may help her in the ascension, which she is already moving forward with, and then we can then move forward and assist humanity to ride along with Sophia. So there you have it. Thank you very much for having us on the show today. It's been a pleasure so far.
Oh, it was, yes, it was thrilling. It was really lovely to hear from your friends. Again, we're on Sacred Matrix, normally with Janet and Sasha Lessin, on Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. I'm sure there's a contact process. I'm not exactly sure where it is on Revolution Radio. But I also work with Janet Lessin on Aquarian Radio, and we have a website, a Gmail, aquarianradio@gmail.com. And we love to hear from listeners. We love to hear from experiencers. And this show is fantastic. I'm thrilled to be on what I call the big show. After working with Aquarian Radio, Revolution Radio has a lot of wonderful programming, a lot of good people. And what I love is that one of my guides told me that our frequency band has been too full of just trivia, sports, and celebrities, and, things that weren't good for us. And that's changing. The frequencies are coming into on media. We're getting wonderful messages like this today and making contact. And actually, this is a new time that we're joining the communication band of our galactic brothers and sisters through our internet, through our media, opportunities. We're actually stepping into their realm and then their frequencies and picking up on these things personally and collectively. It's a very exciting time to be alive, and it's very exciting to hear that peace is just around the corner, because I know right now everywhere there's troubled places on the planet, and we have leaders that, need to have our support and also to give them intention energy that they kind of have their eyes open and pursue peace and not this division. And yes, I think we are all here for a reason, absolutely. So I just want to ask you guys for any last minute words that you might have to say, and we'll close out the show. Go ahead, Hildegard.
Yeah, Aquarian Radio, this is just so awesome, because I was told we are entering the age of Aquarius, and the age of Aquarius is all about bringing about the divine feminine, which means the males balance their male and female energy, the females balance their female and male energy within self, and then through that we can actually bring about a civilization where peace and harmony is created first within each person and then from the inside out. Whereas in the Piscean era, the message that Jesus Christ was to bring in, from what I understand, which was that of love and peace and unconditional love, got a little bit derailed. It was all about war, domination, control, manipulation, and compartmentalization. I can't say that word. Compartmentalization. Compartmentalization. Thank you.
Yes.
Anyway, go ahead.
Mark, any last words?
Quickly, yes, on behalf of Fatah and myself, I'm very grateful to be on board. And for the listeners, especially for the males, it's time now for us to rise out of our solar plex chakra, the third chakra, and move up into the fourth. It is through access through our heart that we can blend our energies and balance ourselves so that we can take on this new time and era. So once again, I'm grateful for being here. Thank you very much, Karen. Thank you, Hildegard.
Well, that's it for the Sacred Matrix. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and I hope that your week is a blessed one. Goodbye.